My research is on how infants and their caregivers interact in different cultural communities. So we look at both the experiences the child makes during the normal course of the day, and also with particular caregivers, like for example the mothers, and how that in turn influences the child's development. And particularly I'm interested in how the child and the caregiver manage to focus their attention on the same thing, and how they communicate with gestures. To look at how people interact with the infants, we see a lot of differences. For example, some cultural communities put their child in a sling and carry them on the back the whole day, whereas others put them in car seats and in strollers and don't touch them much during the day at all. Or on the other hand, there are some cultural communities that play a lot with toys with their infants, and others don't even have toys. So those are the kinds of differences that we look at. And from my perspective, this has long-term consequences for how the child develops and relates to the world. For example, whether it's more important for the child to relate to people and the family, to be part of a group, or to interact with objects and be competitive with other people. So initially there's a very limited repertoire of ways that a child can communicate. But approximately from 9 to 12 months of age, the child starts using gestures, especially pointing, to communicate. The child points at things, so the child knows that he or she can use this gesture to refer to something. And that in turn, the child realizes that there might be labels for things, and so that's very important for language development. There are different models of how children learn language. So in some cultural communities, the child will point at something, and then the caregiver will say, "Oh, did you see the chair?" or "Did you see the bird?" or whatever the child is pointing at. And so it's like a game between the child and the caregiver. The child points at something, the caregiver will say the name. In other cultural communities, this doesn't happen to the same extent. So the child will learn language by listening to other people talk. For the child in India, one thing is that the child learns much more by watching other people, whereas in Germany you have a system where there's a lot of formal instruction. The child goes to school, there is a teacher, and that's how the child is expected to learn. Whereas the Indian child participates in activities and learns them by participating in them. And the priorities of the parents are also different. In India, it's important, in rural India particularly, it's important to have a respectful child, a child who will obey the parents, who will put the emphasis on the family and the community. In Germany, it's more important to have a child who's aware of his or her individuality, who does well in school, who can compete with others also later when they are adults and have a job. And so the foundation for these developments is already created by the way that the caregivers interact with the child. My point of view is that different ways of interacting with the children are adapted to the particular environment that the child grows up in. So you can't say from an absolute point of view, this is the right way to interact with the child, or this is the wrong way, but it has to be in tune with what your general goals are for your child and what kind of world the child is going to live in.